first make cycle for the Tar River Writing Project, Intersections project that we're calling Remix, Remake, and Curate. And so our make cycle has been about biodiversity, citizen science, and trying to bring poetry into it. So let's just do some real quick introductions for each of the rooms for the people who are with us. Can we start with Rob?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Robert Puckett at Rose High School in Greenville, North Carolina. I'm currently in class with my second period Adobe Visual Design students. I've been posting things for them on my G+ account to the community, so we've been enjoying all the responses. So they're here, and if they can join in. I'll move, and they can hop in and post questions or comments if they want to. So.
Can I say hi?
Hi! They're saying hello now. All right.
All right. How about Jennifer Smith?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Smith, and I'm here at Hertford County Early College High School. I'm a TC with the Tar River Writing Project as well, and I am with some students who are in my third block class, who right now are in Miss Kenyatta Ward's biology class. And so all of us will probably say hello at some point.
Cool.
Hi.
Hi. We've enjoyed your poetry this morning, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chris Goforth. Oh no! So it looks like Chris just froze. So hopefully she'll be able to get back in. We'll see how that plays out. Might have to re-invite her. Chris Goforth, just so you know, when she does come back in, she's the one with the cool hat, and she is coming to us from the Museum of Natural Sciences in North Carolina. Has been a big help with this whole project, and hopefully we'll be able to ask her some questions. If you don't have the comments section, a little window open for the Google+, you're welcome to use that to post questions or comments or whatever, so you might want to have that open. And I'm going to see what happens if I re-invite, or let's see. If I re-invite Chris, it helps her get back in. Not. So just to kind of get things going here, we've been talking this week about and thinking this week about citizen science. As citizens, we are part of a community, a nation, and we contribute to it, and we also benefit from it. And it's a huge responsibility, I think, to be a citizen wherever we are. But then we're specifically thinking about being citizens of science, so contributing and perhaps also benefiting from science and offering our observations into the scientific world. So I wondered if maybe we could get teachers and or students to kind of share what you did as citizen scientists during the week.
I'll start. So I did it different days, or we did it different days with different class periods, because the freshmen didn't have Miss Ward for science class. I took them out a day before the biology students went, and then the biology students actually went out during Miss Ward's class period, and I am fortunate enough to have a student teacher and got to go with them. And I think maybe we'll let one of them talk about what they did outside. And nobody? So shy all of a sudden. But we use the iNaturalist app to take pictures and make observations. Mm-hmm. And then came back to class, and in my class we wrote the poem. So that's what we've been doing. It was one of the things is knowing that the data is going into a project and that people might actually use it. and that by making observations, I'm kind of participating in that scientific process.
Very cool. So how about Mr. Puckett then?
Okay, so we went out and went to the wetlands project that's over behind our annex building here at Rose High School. It's kind of a runoff area that they've turned into a small wetlands project. They planted some grasses out there and trying to encourage, I guess, wetland creatures to inhabit that space. So we went out and did the use the app to capture images and post them to the iNaturalist site. Anybody want to talk about that a little bit? Jump in here and talk about some other things that you've done? Yeah, we've had a student do some gardening too, so I'll turn this over.
Hello.
Hey.
So at my house we have like a little fenced-in area. So me and my mom and my sisters, we went out there and planted some cabbage. It was nice, but it's very muddy. We planted it there because like the soil was perfect, like the perfect moistness, I guess. So that's why we did it.
Awesome.
Talk about
Thank
just
you.
talk about when we went for our walk and what you did there too.
When we did our nature walk, we went out to the area by the marsh, or what is it called? But I went over, me and my friend went over to the other side, and we saw, it was very cold, so it was hard to see like animals, but we saw trees and some birds and pine cones and leaves. Huh? Oh yeah, dead flies. So it was fun.
So good. Anybody else want to comment? I feel like hopping in there and talk about your poetry experience, what we did for that.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
Hello. I did a poem about a dandelion, and yeah, it was real cold. It was like the only flower that was like out there because it was cold.
So talk about the process you went through when we observed and used your.
We walked around like the marshlands by the annex building, and we just took pictures of different plants and used a little iNaturalist thing. And we used a square thing to like set up our poem and develop our poem. And wrote our poem. Know that.
Cool.
Anybody else? Okay.
You go since she stole my.
So we'll turn that over to someone else who might want to tell us. Well,
Yes.
I guess we're the only ones there.
So let's
Question.
Let's ask Chris then. We'll let Chris introduce herself, and since she's our resident scientist, maybe Chris can talk to us a little bit about what she did and also why this is really cool and valuable.
All right, hello. Sorry I got cut off last time. So my name is Chris Goforth, and I work at the Museum of Natural Sciences in Raleigh and coordinate the Citizen Science program for the museum. This week I went out to our field station, which is about 6 miles away from the museum buildings proper in Raleigh, but still in the city limits, and looked at the different species that we have here. We've got about 500 species on our species list currently, but that doesn't include very many insects, and so we probably have over 1,000, and you all probably have just as many in your areas as well. And just looked to see how many different species I could find. I found a lot of great stuff, mostly birds, but I did find some insects, which is very exciting to me, and uploaded a bunch of them to iNaturalist. If you guys want to take a look at them, those are there. But the kinds of things that you guys are doing with this iNaturalist project are helping us document where different things are, what different things are active at different times of year. This kind of information is really important because things are starting to move around. You know, if climate change happens the way that scientists think it will, things are going to change a lot in the next several decades, next several centuries, and things that have been in one place for a very long time are potentially going to be moving to other areas. So knowing where they are now is really important for understanding why they move later. Plus, we just don't know what's in a lot of different places, so just exploring what's out there is great. and it gives you a chance to be a part of something big, part of something that is important worldwide, just by making simple observations in your own backyard.
So as I tried to explain this whole thing to my 7-year-old, and I guess I was trying to make sense of it myself, started thinking about a lot of things come back to global warming, and so one of the things I started imagining was, if we have this data about, let's say, palm trees and where they're growing, and if we start seeing them growing in places that we haven't in the past over 10 years, 15 years time or whatever, and that's documented by science, then it gives them some tools to make sense of kind of how the world might be changing and how we might need to adapt to those changes. So since we're talking about this idea of citizen science, in the Google Plus community, Chris and Katie both posted some links to some other cool citizen science projects. The Great Backroar Bird Count starts next Friday. That's something anybody can do. Great family thing to do, great individual thing to do. I think my father's going to go to the golf course and put his clubs away for a few minutes and count some birds. There's also a frog watch that started earlier this month. What are some of the suggestions that Chris, you would maybe make to anybody, teachers, adults, students, little kids, about getting started as citizen scientists on their own? Oh no, we lost her again.
She did not like that question.
There's nothing you can do. So, well, let's come back to that question, I guess. Yeah, because I think there's some stuff worth mentioning. It would we'll just ask Mr. Puckett and Ms. Smith. Do you guys have any things that you picked up on other citizen science projects or notions about getting started as citizen scientists?
I did look at some of the links that they put out there, but I haven't really. I mean, it was such a large group of really cool things in there. It was kind of hard to really take it all in. So I do plan on going back to it and seeing what's there, and hopefully bring some of that into here.
Cool.
Somehow, if there's some way we can sort of incorporate what we do in here to help out with that, that would be awesome. Some graphic arts, or even just being a part of collecting data. I had a student ask me when we were walking around what the red berries were on the holly tree, and I'm like, well, they're just like berries. That's where the seeds are, and so when birds eat them, they carry them to other places, and that's how that species of plant grows in different locations. It just keeps moving further and further into different locations, and that's how the seeds are dispersed. So, I wasn't sure if they were mainly for birds, if other types of animals ate them too, or if they were poisonous or what. I couldn't answer those questions. But
I saw that topic come up in one of the poems.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Chris, what can you tell us about getting started as citizen scientists?
I think the main thing that I would say is that there are so many projects out there in the world. I mean, there's thousands of citizen science projects that you can participate in at this point in our modern lives. The web link that I provided, SciStarter.com, is a really great resource. They have close to 1,000 projects that are aggregated there on their site, and it allows you to search according to your interests. So you can look, if you're interested in astronomy, there are astronomy programs, and you can search for those. If you want to study birds, you can search for those. If you want to sit at a computer and never go outside, there are projects you can do that will let you do that. And so there's a really huge range of things that are out there. And if you get into some of these search engines, you can really narrow down the options according to how much time you want to spend, where you want to do your work, what kinds of topics you're interested in. I think there's a citizen science project out there for almost anyone according to what your interests are, and you just need to go out and look and see what really works for you, and then play around with it see if you like it, and then if you do, keep doing it.
Cool. I actually noticed on that SciStarter site, there are tons of different topics. One of them deals with audio, and one of the later make cycles, they're going to be looking at audio recording. But there was something in that section about like recording dog voices, and it's looking at like human and dog relationship. And a lot of people are dog people, but it seemed like a really neat way to take something from your home and contribute to scientific community. So definitely check out that SciStarter site. Check out the great backyard bird watch. Cool. So we use the iNaturalist, and you guys talked about that a little bit. And I wanted to share, I made a list of some of the things that showed up. And I wanted us to just kind of take a moment to think about and talk about why this stuff is important. So here are some of the things that were posted. Squirrel, crab, seagull, fungus, bittern, which is a bird, fish, dandelions, hollyberries, lichens, roach, moss, I think hornworts, the Japanese Aucuba plant, which I think was posted by a few of Ms. Smith's students, some pine cones, briars, cattails, moth, mistletoe, snail, coral, honeysuckle, frogs, blackbirds, cardinals, a bunch of different kinds of trees, a hawk. Did anybody see the picture of the hawk? It was eating another bird. It was awesome. So that's a lot of stuff. In just a couple of days that we cataloged. So what do we get out of that? You know, when we look at this list, we look at all these different things. What do we make of it as citizen scientists and as students?
I don't know what I get out of it as a scientist, but to me, it kind of tells the story of the landscape of my campus. Because, you know, like the Cuba plant came up kind of early on, and because it's one of the plants that is planted, right? It's got the variegated yellow and green leaves, and it's a deliberate planting. But then you kind of move out in campus to some of the more wooded areas, and we have an arboretum on campus that our school actually kind of, we want to take it on as a service project, restoring. So as you move kind of into that space, then you begin to see things like cattails in the creek, and mistletoe and briars and all of this other stuff that's a little bit wilder and less cultivated. And that says something really interesting about the campus that I get to work on and that we get to learn on, I think.
So our campus at Rose is much different. Rob took his students out to explore that. Rob, what did you guys take away from it?
I'm asking these guys in the class to kind of think about that for a second. So, what did you guys take away from that experience?
There's more to nature than just live animals.
Did you hear that?
I believe she was saying something about there being more than what you notice at first look.
Yeah, there's more to nature than just animals and plants and live plants. Like there's, you know, they mentioned the dead flies, and I'm like, well, that's nature. Like something caused the death of all those flies, and so that could be certainly something you could study if you wanted to. It's a very small sort of group of random flies there that are dead. You know, I mean, how'd they get there? You know, these are questions you could ask yourself about that. So yeah, I think, you know, closer observations of what's around. I was thinking that it might be kind of, if they take away from this a sense of maybe wanting more sort of natural spaces in for that. Some headphones came unplugged.
All right.
Sorry. But how to maybe encourage them to consider more natural spaces in the city that they live in. You know, even though we live in the middle of Greenville, like that wetlands project, a lot of them didn't even know it was there, and you know, it's a really nice little space, and it's kind of dirty right now. There's like a lot of trash in there, so I was thinking it'd be cool if we could go out there with some gear and clean it up, and you know, kind of revitalize it back to what it was when they first put it in, and then think about where should we have some other places like that, maybe in the courtyard where we put bird houses up or bird feeders up. I don't know that we want to encourage a lot of birds in our courtyard where people are eating lunch, but other spaces around the school, natural areas that would encourage animals to be, or
Yeah,
something like
those wetlands are neat. They're man-made wetlands, and what they use it to take natural runoff, water that runs through the community that was all built up with streets and concrete and buildings and that sort of thing. But they planted native plants that would do well in wetlands, and then those plants help to filter the water, basically to clean the water, so it's not as polluted as it might be just running through streets and such. So Chris, as you as a scientist think about that list of things that we collected, how do we need to think about that? How do we need to understand it?
Well, I think one thing to point out is that you guys are making your observations in February. This isn't exactly a really diverse time of year, so a lot of the things that you might see, in June or July or even the spring, are not really out. So things are only going to get more exciting from here on out. You're looking at like the very slowest time of our year, but you still found a really good diversity of things. So even though it is winter, everything's pretty dead. It's a lot harder to identify some of the plants that are out there because they're missing leaves and some of those good identifying characteristics. But you still found a lot of stuff, and that's great. Even if it is the middle of winter, there's still so much life out there, and it's important to know that that's there. I think to understand how those things play a role in your life, and also how they play a role in the greater environment. I did have one question for you guys too about your observations. Did you find that when you started making your observations that you started noticing other things? So like you might have started with like a big thing like a tree, but then started noticing like all the lichens growing on it or an insect on the ground. Or I'm always intrigued by how people tend to start with the big things, and then once they start making observations, start noticing all these other things. I'm just wondering if you guys had that same experience.
Yeah, we have someone. Hold on. Say who you are.
I'm Naomi, and me and my friend, we noticed from looking at like big trees to starting to notice the small dead insects on underneath the wall, underneath the sill of the windows, which was funny because the windows were on the other side of us. We weren't even paying attention to that at first. Would you like to say something? You were with me.
Oh. Anybody else? We'll talk about how you went from looking at sort of a larger sort of picture to narrowing it down to something more
No, I only noticed the
detail.
small things.
Then talk about it. Okay, so one person said that she sort of starts with the small things, like she really looks at the small details and then kind of goes out from there. But yeah, that's
Cool.
I noticed at both Hertford and at Rose, students noticed moss, and said, which is kind of cool. Instead of seeing just the tree, saw the moss growing on it or lichens growing on it or whatever, and that was a neat trend to see. So thinking back to that, the list of stuff. Actually, let me interrupt myself. Jennifer, you have a student sitting with you. Is there something that y'all were hoping to share with us?
Yeah, so this is Rachel, who is very shy. So we'll just let her speak when the spirit moves her.
Okay.
But we were talking, Miss Ward and I were talking, and one of the things I forgot to mention about the iNaturalist app that she really liked, and that has been fun for me too, and Rachel can maybe jump in on this, is that it allows people to respond and help you identify things.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there's that social aspect of that we're also getting in the Google Plus community, which is kind of neat.
Nice.
and it's going to help when she teaches classification too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really kind of cool. Kind of that. It's been fun to work in a cross-disciplinary way on this particular kind of week between the two of us. Rachel, did you notice any moss?
Oh, yeah. Like, near the tree branch, well, the bark of the tree, they had moss growing. Yeah.
So why did you choose that, though? Why did you choose to document that?
Because it was a lot of it. And it wasn't around, like, it was just by certain trees, though.
So the fact that it wasn't everywhere. I'm curious about, I mean, like, we spend a lot of time outdoors here. And I was wondering if you already had in mind some of the things that you wanted to take pictures of before you walked out the door.
Well, I wanted to take pictures of the ants, but it's too cold for ants to be outside. So I was looking for some. They might have been, like, under the tree or, like, by the bushes. But then, like, when I looked by the bushes, it was just a bunch of rocks and leaves. And so I just took a picture of the bush because it was a lot of them cluttered together. I liked it.
So you were looking for things that were visually interesting to you.
Right on.
Moss was the thing that got written about a lot in the poems that got posted to Google Plus, which I thought was really interesting.
So one of my favorite things that I saw was a spider. A lot of people find insects and sorts to be troubling, don't like them, whatever. Chris loves bugs. That's her thing. Thinking about all the stuff we were looking at, let's say we took that spider, and what if we just erased the spider from the bigger picture? Just say, okay, no more spiders. How does that affect the rest of all this stuff?
Well, so pretty much every species on our planet has some role they play in their environment. Spiders are huge predatory animals. They really help control other species that a lot of times we as humans don't necessarily want around. So having a spider in your home is a really good way to get rid of things like mosquitoes or houseflies or other things that you might not want. Eliminating spiders would be disastrous because the insect population would explode enormously and we would be completely overrun with bugs. So even if you're scared of spiders, they do perform a really essential service that we benefit from as humans. I think that role is something that we need to just kind of recognize as being important, and try to divorce that from the personal likes or distastes we have for things that are out there in the world.
Cool. I want to make sure that we give students and teachers a chance to ask Chris in particular questions they might have, since she does have that expertise and is our citizen science person from the museum. So if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat or come and speak up. Or teachers, you can speak for your students. Are there any questions that have come up that you guys want to ask at this point?
Well, I'm kind of wondering how we teach students to make the kinds of observations that Chris is talking about. Even as an adult, my eye is kind of drawn to things that I'm interested in visually. So I'm wondering how to teach myself how to make the kinds of observations that will be more useful.
Well, I think a lot of students, honestly, choose the things that they like when they're studying things. So, like, I really love dragonflies, so I do a lot of research with dragonflies, and I was initially interested in them because they were visually appealing to me. And I think a lot of other people that study insects or birds or plants, there's something about that particular group that really calls to them as a person, and that causes them to start asking questions about how that creature, that being, fits into the world, and then that leads them to the scientific questions that they try to answer. So I think starting from that kind of personalized space that you're in and realizing that you have that interest and then just pursuing that interest and continue to ask questions can take you a really long way towards really answering some important questions.
Cool. Cool. Other questions that come up? And if you do have other questions, speak up whenever you feel like it. So yeah, just feel free to interrupt it if you do. I wanted to make sure that we did take a little bit of time to talk about the poetry that was shared, and it was cool to see. We had students who wrote kind of perspective poems as moss or tree. We had students who reacted and responded almost philosophically to their own presence in the cold, and sometimes a kind of a connection to nature. Students who wrote haikus. For me, I like the experience. I used the Quadbox Poem Starter. I was excited to see that there were classes. I think Ms. Boldanowski's class used that whole process as a group, the Quadbox thing, and wrote a poem together and recited it and posted it. So there were a lot of different things that happened. And also the rhythm circles. So I was interested to hear kind of teacher and student perspective on what those things contributed to the experience for you.
Can you restate that question for my people so they can hear it again?
Yeah, certainly. So thinking about the fact that a lot of us came back and wrote poetry, or did a rhythm circle, or whatever it might have been, was kind of wondering what the follow-up did for you, what it contributed to the experience for you, being able to go back and write poems or whatever you might have done. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, so we did the first thing that we did in my class was the quad box, first thing that we did?
Yeah. Then after that, we did the rhythm circle, then we made our poems and posted them.
So it was kind of quad box, rhythm circle, go back to the poems, or go back to the quad box and use poems. And actually, Mike's poem was one that we read aloud in class, kind of as an exemplar of how you might take it and take an observation that you made and make a personal connection to it, connect it with a memory, and then kind of use that as a through line. And there are some of the students' poems where you can see that modeling kind of taking place. But I think the most fun that everybody had was probably the rhythm circle. What did you think, Rachel?
Well, I mean, I didn't want to do it at first, but it was funny watching everybody else and how they messed up, and it was funny.
So it was interesting because the first class had the least amount of time to do it in, and they were the only group that could do it in one take. Everybody else was like, no, we got to do it again. We got to do it again. But that was part of the fun, I think, of doing the whole thing. And it definitely, like, I've heard students today still making those rhythms and making those sounds that they were making, in some cases 2 days before in the rhythm circle, which is fun.
Well, I know from watching your videos that I definitely picked up the rhythm myself and kept singing them kind of over and over myself for quite a long time after I watched them, and I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, no, I had a group of boys today who, like, were all still going, I'm a bird, which is, I think, is that first group that did the thing. So, yeah, the ninth graders. And, you know, I had some students who got flustered and didn't want to be on camera doing it, and they, you know, afterwards were like, oh, I wish I had done that. Why did I not participate in that? So, which is also kind of interesting. But it's been fun to kind of watch all the poems go up and to read and be able to respond to them. And one of the things that's been really great about that process is that students are getting feedback from someone other than me, which I think sometimes my feedback stops meaning as much. And it's, you know, like it's cool to feel like you've got an audience beyond just, you know, like your teacher.
Yeah.
And an audience of your peers and an audience of other adults that care about what you have to say is pretty awesome. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just a nerd.
Let's hear from the students in Mr. Puckett's class. We got who do we have here? I got here.
Oh, my name is
There we go.
Devon.
I'm Tobias.
So
So
go ahead,
tell-
talk about.
Huh?
You got to talk.
Oh, I did my poem on dandelions too, but mine was just a single one. And when I saw that dandelion, like most of them were with other ones, but this one was by itself, and it stood out to me because I wonder why it was there by itself. It was along with other plants, but then again, this one was kind of the brightest one out of all of them. So that's probably why I chose mine and did my poem on it.
I think like the poems helped me understand like how it's like kind of, because it was kind of hard finding like a plant out there because everything was dead. So it kind of like shows like how like plants are like dying in like different seasons and make you appreciate like nature more because like you usually see nature everywhere, but then like when you're looking for it and it's not there, it's like wow, you know. And but my dandelion looks better than his, so it's fine.
Is there really neat observations that you guys made there, that where that color pops out of this kind of otherwise dead space, and the way you guys connected to that was really cool. Chris, tell us from a scientist perspective, you know, how do scientists look at what we did with this process? You know, the fact that we took nature and scientific observation and went back and made poetry out of it.
Well, I think just the fact that you made observations at all would make most scientists very excited and very happy. So the fact that you guys actually went outside, you know, made some, you know, you generated data that people can use. That's fantastic. I think there's also this idea, though, that scientists are not very creative people, and that is not always the case. I mean, there are a lot of scientists out there that write poems, that write novels, that do photography, that paint. And so I think they appreciate the kinds of things that you do a lot more than we get a reputation, or we have a reputation for. I personally think poetry is a really excellent way for you guys to connect to the observations that you've made on a more personal level. And if that connects you to the natural world more effectively, then that's awesome, and you should keep doing it.
Awesome. CJ Sweet from the Sacrificial Poets group was the one who taught us the rhythm circle activity, and it was something that he contributed. He's not able to be here with us on our Google chat today at some other engagements, but one of the things that he always talked about with us when he introduced that process was that the circle, he sometimes referred to as a cipher, was, I guess, is about kind of connecting community, connecting people, and sharing knowledge or information or observation. And so it's funny because it was a very poetic way of interacting and sharing experience. But in a lot of ways, it's not that much different from getting on iNaturalist and sharing our observations and ideas and experiences, or just the knowledge of what we saw. So different ways of interacting with nature and with community, both of which I thought were really, really important and valuable. What other questions, thoughts did anyone want to share as we get toward our final minutes of our hangout?
Jabari,
What?
any questions?
Oh no.
You just unmuted.
I know. That's because he was supposed to be talking.
Oh, you're gonna say
He was
that?
about to say something.
It was fun.
It was fun.
I thought it was going to be
Lost my
boring
train of
at first, but
We can't hear you. You should come over here.
repeat it.
No, I can't hear you. You gotta go over here.
Some thought it was going to be boring at first, but once we got out there, they actually had a good time and enjoyed themselves.
Yeah, it was pretty cool not to do stuff in class, but we could go outside in the class. You play on computers.
I think we should take a field trip to the beach next time.
No, we need to go to the aquarium.
Yeah,
Go to the
you-
aquarium.
Well, we could possibly look into going to the museum and then making some observations about graphic design and things like that. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I thought it was interesting what Chris was saying about people not thinking of scientists as poets or artists or whatever. But I remember doing an article, a design layout for NCLR on John Lawson, and just all the drawings and writings that he did about his observations and going through North Carolina. And, and a lot, Audubon is probably pretty well known for making illustrations of birds and species of birds and cataloging those. And just, like, I always really enjoyed looking at these etchings and drawings and engravings that were done by scientists as they were exploring and recording the things that they saw in their notebooks or their field journals or whatever as they were collecting data about stuff, because we didn't have iPads, there weren't iPhones and cameras. They had to draw what they saw, and so I think that's really fascinating. And I mentioned that to my students before we went out, that that's kind of what we're doing with our books, is we're using the technology, but we're also making our notes in our field journals, as well as using sort of a hybrid where we're using digital technologies to be a part of that collection of data.
Oh, actually,
Oh, we have a comment.
Here, come take my seat. Yeah. I'm paid. Oh, sorry, I got it.
It's me again. Actually, I like how we tied poetry into it because I write poetry on my free time anyway, and I posted to a team writing website. So I thought it was really cool that you could post it there too. And yeah, it was really cool. Yeah.
So how was it? I mean, as far as, do you typically write about nature in your poems, or what are your subjects?
I really like what I do to write my poems. I look at pictures on Google, and whatever picture speaks to me that day, I write what I think those people are feeling at the time. But I like actually writing it from nature because that's the best inspiration to write it from. So it was fun.
So we can a poem about cabbage.
Cabbage. Yeah, I'll write a poem about cabbage.
Awesome.
I also have something to say about like the scientist not being creative thing. Like, I'm like an artist myself, and I draw and like I write too and like everything. And I really want to go into marine biology, so I think that stereotype can be done away with because I want to be a scientist, and I'm already an artist, so I think scientists can definitely be creative as well.
Yeah, and the thing that both seem to have in common is to be a good artist, to be a good scientist, you have to be such a keen observer of what you see, of what's going on, and that in that way, I think there's almost no difference. It might be difference in how each might interpret, perhaps, but the observation, just that keen observation, just is so important. The students in Mr. Puckett's class brought up field trips and ways to kind of continue their own thinking, which is awesome. And Rob mentioned the Museum of Science. So I wondered if we could go back to Chris and ask her just about what we might find if we were to, on our own or otherwise as classes or whatever, go to the museum and take advantage of some of what they offer.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my thing unmuted. Yeah, so the museum is right in the middle of downtown Raleigh, but it really features the wildlife and the science of North Carolina really heavily. We've got two buildings. So the Nature Exploration Center is the older building of the two, and that's more of a kind of traditional natural history museum where you're seeing, taxidermied animals and recreations of habitat types within the museum. There are also a lot of live animals there. We have a lot of snakes and insects, and we have a live butterfly house kind of thing. And then our other building is the Nature Research Center. That really highlights scientific research and how we're learning about the natural world through research. So you can observe the scientists at our museum actually doing their work in their labs. You can see what kinds of equipment they're using. There are hands-on exhibits where you can interact with specimens from the collection. A lot of interactive kinds of things that you can do in that building. We also have a citizen science center in that building, so people can learn about how to get involved in citizen science and the different ways that through the museum and other places you can actually do scientific research as a citizen scientist.
Cool.
And it's free, so you guys can all come and it doesn't cost anything.
We actually scheduled our field trip yesterday, so we're excited to come.
Excellent.
Awesome. So any last thoughts from Ms. Smith's room, Mr. Puckett's room?
So Jalen has come in. Jalen, you want to talk a little bit about your feeling about doing this?
With my natural thing?
Yeah, speak up.
I thought that it was like very interesting. Like it gave me a chance to actually go outside and experience for myself. I had like a hands-on experience with it, and it made the poem writing a lot easier to do. And yeah.
So that hands-on experience made it easier for you to write the poem. Cool.
Awesome.
Could you guys hear that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes,
good.
That was great. Any last thoughts from Mr. Puckett's room?
I just think, it was a great experience for these guys to go out and be able to do that. We'll probably be doing some more. We also did a beat circle, and I think I killed our video. I was making an audio and a video capture using this little sneak preview of next week with the audio visualization app. So we recorded our beat circle using that in QuickTime, so you could see the visualization of sound with the app. And when I tried to extract the sound from it to post just the audio, it killed our recording. So we're going to do it again, and we'll post the audio to this make cycle, and then next week you'll be able to see what it looks like visually when we do that make cycle. So hopefully it'll be really cool. It was a really good experience, though. I'm not sure how many of these guys knew about the wetlands project we have going on back there, but now they all do, and hopefully we can encourage some people to get involved in going out there and cleaning it up. Maybe we can partner with the science department. So we'll see.
Very cool. Chris, any last words from the Science Museum?
I just wanted to say that I've been kind of inspired by all of you who have done these poems to actually incorporate your poetry activity into the programs that I do at our field stations. So, I take people out into the field and we do hands-on nature observations just like you did over like an hour or 2 hours. But I'm really excited about potentially adding the rhythm circle and the poetry writing into what we do so that people can form the same kind of connections to nature that you have through your writing. So I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you guys all for joining in and sharing your experiences and being part of this whole thing. Keep posting stuff to the site. Keep checking out each other's poems, and more making next week. So y'all have a great weekend.
Thanks. You too, Mike.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Chris.
Bye.
Bye-bye.